Welcome back. In this video, we will look at the while loop. So one thing we need to learn right away about the while loop is that the while loop is a superset of the for loop. And by that I mean anything that you can write using a for loop, you can also write using a while loop. However, the reverse is not true. There are certain things that only a while loop is possible, and in a future video you will see exactly one of those cases. So what we want to do for this video is to re-implement the program from the previous video, but this time using a while loop. So there are certain steps that we need to take to construct a while loop, and the first step usually involves creating an initializer, okay, aka where do you want to start, and of course you will also create an ending point where you want to stop. Alright, let's do that. So let's say start is 1 and let's say stop is 5. Okay, so now let's actually write the while loop, and the while loop starts off with the while keyword, and we specify the start. Okay, and here we put a comparison operator such as less than, greater than, equal to. So let's say while start less than or equal to stop, colon, then I want to print name. Okay, so one thing that most beginners forget is the third step, and the third step is we must increment the start so that it eventually reaches the stop. Okay, and this is one thing where many beginners make mistake. They forget to include this increment. So if I leave this and I'm gonna run it like this, right? If I click play, enter a name, Dalson maybe, and if I press enter, it keeps going. It will never stop. So let me control C. Okay, control C. That allows me to interrupt. Now the reason why it never stopped is because when I printed the name, I went back up to line 16 and start is still 1, and I print name again and I come back up and start is still 1. So this loop will never stop because we never make start go towards stop. So to do that, we actually have to increment start. So we will say start is equal to start plus 1. So whatever the old start has, we're going to add 1, and that's going to be our new start, and we're going to put that in the old start variable. Okay, so notice I have to use the same variable. Alright, so now if I click play, I enter my name, let's say Dalson. Now it stops. Okay, it stops because each time through the loop, start becomes 1 bigger until eventually it becomes 5. Alright, okay, so let's create the other program where we looked at whether a number is even, and if it's even, we want to print that number. So let's do that. Okay. So while let's say start, or let's say begin, and let's call it count. Okay. Or some may call it I. Let's say I is 0 and stop, or end is 20. Okay. While I less than or equal to 20. Now keep in mind I could always do this. I could say 21 and I could have while I less than, oh, why am I putting a number here? While I less than end. Okay. But let's just leave it at 20 and have less than or equal to end, colon. I'm going to say if I modulus 2 equals 0, I want to print, what do I want to print? I want to print I. Okay. And that's it. And that's it. So if I run this, notice it keeps giving me 0. Once again, you can clearly see that the problem, Control C, is because we are not incrementing. So the reason why I am showing you this again is because it's a common thing. Quite a few beginning programmers will forget to increment the while loop. And if you fail to increment the while loop, you get an infinite loop, a loop that never ends. Alright, and of course it's easy to fix it. The question is, where do you put it? So do I say I is I plus 1? And by the way, I'm going to do this. Instead of saying I is equals to I plus 1, you could say I plus equal 1. Okay. In some books, you're going to see I plus equal 1. And that's just shortcut for saying I is I plus 1. I plus 1. So if you see me using the other version, just in your mind, realize that it's actually the shorthand of this type of increment. Okay, now here's the problem. If I put my increment inside the if, then if I click play, let's see what happens. Alright, it stops at 0 and it sort of freezes. So let me stop it. Okay, so why does it stop? Well, the problem becomes this if construct, okay, is not always executed. So the code on line 27 and line 28 is conditional upon I being an even number. Initially, 0 is an even number, so we print 0 and then we increment I. I is now 1. Is 1 an even number? No. So do we execute line 27 and line 28? We don't. So once again, the increment is not executed, which means Python will simply keep I being 1, which means it will never execute 27 and 28. And that's the reason why you see only the 0 printed and nothing else. So what we should have done was to take this and place it somewhere where we know it will always be executed. And that's out here. Okay? That's right out here. Even if we skip the if, we know it has to execute line 28. Every time it has to execute line 28. Alright, so that's something to be mindful of. You don't want to put your increment code inside a condition, inside an if statement. Alright, because then the code becomes conditional and it will execute certain times, and you don't want that. Okay, so this is what we mean when we say we create a while loop. Okay, so once again, any loop can be created using a while loop. Alright, let's create another. Let me comment this. Actually, I'll use the begin and end. So I'm gonna close that. Okay, so let's write a program that asks the user to enter a number, and we'll keep asking them to enter the number until they actually type Q. Okay, to quit. So what I'm gonna do, I will tell you that the only way to solve this problem, okay, write a program that keeps asking the user for a number, Q to quit. Okay, I know this is a topic for a later video, but I want us to think about this. This is the question I want us to ask ourselves. Do we know how many times the user will enter a number? Right? So while I'm writing this program, can I guess how many numbers the user will enter? Will they enter 5 numbers, then type Q? Will they enter 1 number, then type Q? Or will they keep typing in numbers until they get tired, maybe after 100 entries, and then they quit? So notice this question cannot be answered. I do not know how many times the user will type a number. So because I do not know how many times the user will type a number, it means I do not know how many times the loop should repeat itself. And so we end up with a situation where we need to write a loop whereby it will repeat as many times as the user wants. Okay? So we will look at that in a subsequent video, but for the next video I want us to look at this while loop in Python tutor so that we can see exactly how the loop executes. I'll see you in the next video.